So I think we're beginning to become successful at developing what we call brain circulation models. So the idea is that you don't necessarily have to go back 100%, but you can give back in different ways by going back to the extent that you can. And so at the African University of Science and Technology where I work, there are some people who come for a week to teach a short course, or a month to teach a module, or some people might take a sabbatical of up to a year to give back. And then there are others who choose to come back and spend the rest of their time in Africa. So the important idea is to allow people from the diaspora to contribute their knowledge to developing societies. So the truth is, Nigeria used to fund science and scientific research in the 60s and 70s, but then later on took away the mechanisms that provided funding for research. And through the intervention of UNESCO and the former president Obasanjo, the science fund was almost introduced, but unfortunately it was never introduced. And I would argue that in spite of all the capacity that exists in Nigeria, we cannot have meaningful development until we really fund research that can allow 160 million Nigerians to do basic work that leads to innovation and applications of science. So we still need this, and it needs to be introduced for the full impact of research to have an effect on lives of people in Nigeria. For Africa to develop, you need a critical mass of scientists and engineers, which means that we have to figure out a way of educating a lot more engineers than we can. Now, in the absence of that, what you then have to do is focus on very high quality science and engineering. Because what you find is that 1% of scientists, usually the very best, contribute 99% of the innovations. On the other hand, if you want a critical mass that can really drive development, you need to have a massive investment in science and engineering education to produce that kind of impact that we desire in Africa.